Hi, I'm Tiana Shoei. I'm a writer, entrepreneur, leader, and energy. This is my podcast, Ain't Quite Right. Join me as we laugh, learn, and live big. All right. Welcome to the first ever Tiana Shoei Ain't Quite Right podcast.
If you could only see the setup that we have here, it ain't quite right.
It's very apropos for our podcast. The fact that we're holding our microphones too, I think, is good.
Yeah.
And with me is I've even got a thing on my elbow. With me is my co-host Jack Connolly.
Little did I know.
Jack didn't realize I was roping him into this when we got started.
Yeah, but here I am, everyone. So, Jack Connolly, for a media guy, you could say.
Yes, Jack has joined me on a few adventures.
Yeah, we went to New York City a couple times, downtown Greenville, and her farmstead here. She's slightly, I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know. She's got a farm here basically as well, with horses next door that are slightly neglected, but they're not hers. She pets the horse every once in a while, and a cat that follows her on walks.
Yes, that's true. And I actually have a good farm story for a little bit later in the podcast. But I figure before we jump into the content, we'll give a little bit of an introduction as to why in the world I'm doing this podcast and what listeners who are brave enough to join us on this journey can expect for future episodes. So first of all, just a little background about myself, and then Jack, I think you should give a little introduction to yourself as well.
All right.
I'm originally from Southern California. I'm a Californian converted Southerner. I now live, as Jack mentioned, out in the farmstead in South Carolina. So my husband and I live on 10 acres. And as Jack mentioned, we've got animals next door. Cows make weird noises, for the record. I did not realize how weird the noises are that cows make until I moved out here. I'm also an entrepreneur, own a couple small businesses, including the business that is funding this particular endeavor. And I am an insurance executive, have spent almost 20 years in the insurance industry. And I'm a crazy, passionate learner and endurance athlete and writer. I'm kind of in a little bit of everything. And that is why it felt very apropos to name my podcast Ain't Quite Right, because I think anybody that knows me can agree I ain't quite right.
It's good. That sums it up, I'd say.
So Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, basically, I'm a jack of all trades in a different aspect, you could say, more behind the scenes. So I got my own business called Jack Robert Photography. I also do video, and basically that's how we connected. Tiana saw me shooting photos at a coffee shop and said, "Hey, I need a photographer." And now we've been shooting together for pretty much the past year, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
And just helping each other out with whatever needs to be done here in regards to Tiana Shoei speaking and leading and encouraging people. So we made a couple videos, did a few shoots, and now we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, and it's been fun. Jack had no idea what he was getting roped into when he talked to some strange girl at a coffee shop.
True that.
Yes.
True that.
Yes, always an adventure, and we're going to keep it that way, right?
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
Where we're going next? London?
Yeah, that would be fun. Hey, we'll add that to the list for sure.
Yeah.
Once the world opens back up. Right now, we are still in the middle of COVID, so there is still a lot of travel restrictions. Speaking of which, you have quite an international life. You left off one pretty big detail about your international life.
Yes, true that. My wife's Ukrainian, and I met while I was on, you could call it a mission trip, over there in Ukraine. I was on tour for 2 weeks, and she was the interpreter, and I hit it off with her, but she was all business. I eventually convinced her to marry me, and now she's my wife. However, we're going through the immigration process, and she's not quite here yet, but hopefully soon. So, yeah, I went to Ukraine maybe 12 times past year, and I love Europe. It's awesome. But yeah, so kind of international, you'd say, between here and Europe, quite a bit.
Yeah, and Jack's photography is amazing. He's done great work, not only in the stuff that I've been fortunate enough to get him to work with me on, but if you go online, you can follow him on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Jack Robert Photography. Don't you dare put an S after Robert.
It just said, good to know. Jack Robert Photography. You can see a lot of his work there. And you also have a website, don't you?
JackRobertPhotography.com.
Look at you, keeping
There
it
you
nice
go.
and easy.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, awesome. Well, one of the things I guess we'll talk about is what listeners can expect as far as content is concerned. First and foremost, I love to laugh. And I realized as I was putting this together, I had way too serious of content. And I was like, ain't nobody got time for that. We got to have some fun. So we're going to hopefully tell some fun stories, make everybody laugh. I am an avid reader. In fact, it is almost a miracle that we've gone this many minutes without me saying I read in a book once.
I'm really surprised, actually.
Jack knows me well enough to know that I quote books just about all the time. I read about a book a week, and I'm trying to slow that down a little bit just because I want to savor books more, but I have a reading list that doesn't allow me to slow down too much. And so we're gonna laugh together, we're gonna learn together, and learn how to live a little bit more fun and full. I have a really interesting and unique story, which I'm not going to tell all in the first podcast. It's going to be like cliffhanger. I'm going to make you listen to it throughout the episodes. And just to show you that resilience is possible, you can create a life of your making if you're willing to do the work it takes. And I have a lot of fun, cool, unique tips and tricks that I have learned to create a life of my making, my dreams. And I would love to share a lot of this found wisdom that I have earned the good old fashioned hard way, and that is from the School of Hard Knocks.
School of Hard Knocks, wherever that is.
I've been trying to get out before I got my PhD, but I figured since I'm this far in, I may as well just go all the way and get the PhD.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. How many different avenues of things are you into? You have the insurance company, insurance business that you're into. What do you do there?
So I actually work for what's called an insurtech, and an insurtech is, without putting everybody to sleep, it is basically technology plus insurance put together. So we are not an insurance company, but we service the insurance industry doing a very niche work called subrogation. And that is the work that happens when a claim occurs, but it is not the fault of the insured. So for example, you're driving your car. If I hit you, you're going to call your insurance company and you're going to say, you need to fix my door because Tiana Show is a crazy driver.
That's right.
And they're going to fix your door. And then they're going to call my insurance company. Their subrogation team is going to call my insurance company and say, you got to pay for Jack's door. So that's what I do on the insurance side. But I also have a bike shop. My husband and I and our business partner, Benjamin, own Benchmark Bicycle in downtown Greer, South Carolina. And that is spelled Greer, because for those of you who are nowhere near South Carolina, Greer may be a hard word to spell. And being a bike shop owner also means that I ride mountain bikes. And if you were watching the video right now, you could see I've got very, very scarred up elbows because I managed to land myself in the emergency room
Too many times.
Yes, way more than a woman my age should be. I'm also an avid road biker. I'm an ultra marathoner. I have done over 70 ultra marathons. And for those of you listening that say, what in the heck is an ultra marathon? It is any distance longer than a marathon, and a marathon is 26.2 miles. I blog. So on my website, tianashowy.com, I have a blog that I put up at least one blog a month. And now I'm a podcaster. So we're going to have 2 podcasts a month that come out. And
you also do, what is it, leadership training?
Yes, leadership training. I'm very passionate about leadership.
Yeah.
You want to know why?
I do, actually. I'm sure they're dying. This is a cliffhanger, guys.
Cliffhanger. Why am I passionate about leadership? I learned a very important principle about leadership early on through observation, but then it was articulated perfectly by one of my favorite authors and well-known speakers, Leif Babin and Jocko Willink. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And, so a team and an organization will only ever grow to the capacity that their leadership has grown. In other words, your company or your team will be stifled by your inability to grow as a leader. And so leadership training, in my opinion, is so important. It's a skill set that is often overlooked. And the reason that I know it's so important, this is a statistic that it's almost disheartening when I tell you this statistic, Jack, because you're an entrepreneur, so you don't have to deal with this kind of thing that the business world does. But having been in the business world for almost 20 years, I know this is true. There's a Gallup poll that was conducted, and the results were that 68% of employees are unengaged in their work.
Wow.
Yes, that is a tremendous amount of people who are going in, putting in 40 hours a week unengaged. And I would love to change the world so that way there are no more unengaged employees. Get people out of businesses where you're not at your highest and best, help people find their motivation to be plugged into the right place, but also teach leaders to step up and make the workforce a place where people want to thrive and change those statistics, because 68% is a ridiculous number.
That's a bit rough.
Yeah.
Here's a scenario, though, maybe a challenging one. What if those unengaged people are people who are on assembly lines?
Well,
that's pretty mindless work sometimes. Maybe dangerous, but tell me an example of how you get those folks engaged.
Yeah,
on the spot.
That's a great question, and that's where leadership training comes in. Really, it's a really important aspect to that. Because when you have an unengaged employee, it's generally even on the assembly line because they don't understand the why behind why their work is important. And so when you are on the assembly line and you are playing a critical role that can't be mechanized, in today's world, there are enough robotics that if you have an assembly line, and I say quote in quote fingers, assembly line position, your job is critical. Companies can't afford to just pay people when so many jobs now can be outsourced to robots. If you watch any of these really cool shows that are on, documentaries on how it's made and stuff like that, you'll see that robotic arms can take care of a lot. So if you're on an assembly line, you have a critical job. And a good manager, a good leader will give you that purpose, that sense of why behind what you're doing is important, and help keep you engaged. And again, that's why it goes back to there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. So that was a good question, Jack.
Yeah, I tried stumping
you. Being a leadership guru and nerd, I don't have all the answers, but I certainly, if I don't have it, I'll figure it out. But I do spend a lot of time learning about leadership.
Yeah, that was solid. I approve.
Well, look at that. I got his endorsement. Ladies and gentlemen, I have my first fan.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, we wanted to keep these podcasts short and sweet, something you could listen to on your morning commute for those of you that still go into the office, or if you're out going for a walk, because I highly, highly, highly recommend having daily exercise of some capacity. And we just wanted to give you a little food for thought as you tackle each day. And so I think, Jack, unless there's anything else you can think of, this concludes episode 1 of It Ain't Quite Right.
Stay tuned. That was the cliffhanger.
Thanks for listening to my podcast. Tune in for future episodes.